Good old Leonard.
It's something that goes beyond political correctness. It's a kind of tyranny of what the right thing should be. Those ideas are swarming through the air like locusts. To write the verse, see if it's a slogan or not, and then toss it. Doesn't sound like something that's easy.
Yeah, that's everything right there.
Recently, in the conservative space of, you could call it cultural production, there's this tendency to sort of creating these cultural silos.
Everybody exists in their own
Echo chamber.
I started working with
Kevin.
The Orthodox Outcast
Played a really big role as a mentor for me. And one thing that defines a good piece of art is that it gives something a name.
almost anything.
That, like, name drops a politician isn't going to be coming from the higher motivation of love and common humanity.
Good day, my dear friends. Manoelia here. This is SOS Podcast. You're about to listen to the interview I did with the great, magnificent Tim Thompson. Fantastic musician, singer, songwriter. He's been played a lot on SOS Radio, so you may be familiar with him. If you're not, you will be by the time this episode is over. You will want to go check out his music. It's fantastic. It's amazing. All the links are in the description. So what we discussed mostly is his article. It's a fantastic article. He sent it to us. We really liked it, so we put it out. It's you'll find the link in the description. So go check out the article, and that's a big part of what we talk about in this interview. Songwriting, pop culture, various echo chambers artists find themselves in, whether it's the far left or the far right or kind of in between, and how that affects songwriting and your identity. And sometimes it becomes part of your identity, and you just write songs for that camp. Anyways, fantastic conversation. If you don't know who Tim Thompson is, I'm sure you will by the end of this. Go check out all his stuff. Links are in the description. Word to Big Bird, jing jang to wingity wang. Word. All right, we are live. This is SOS Podcast, Study of Stuff. My guest today is Tim. We've been trying to make this happen for quite a while. I think we're on 4 months now. And it's mostly my fault. Yeah. It's mostly my fault. It's not Tim. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we get started and get into why you're on the show and what we're gonna, the meat and potatoes of it all, I just want you to give the audience a little bit about, a little introduction about yourself. Who are you? Where do you come from? Why do you love music? Why do you even care about the future of music and all that stuff in between? Feel free to say anything you like. I'm also going to be including 2 interviews in the show notes. 2 amazing interviews you did, one with Gene at Live Free Podcast and one with Joseph Arthur. Both of them were fantastic. Your story was outlined really well. So a lot of the details will be in there, but feel free to say what you want. And a shout out to Gene, our boy. He was on the show as well. So take it away, my friend Tim. Who is Tim?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. This is going to be fun. I grew up, I was born I was actually born in Manitoba, but grew up in Northern Ontario, way up in the Northwest in the woods, west of Thunder Bay, for anyone who knows Ontario. And I grew up on a small farm, part of a community of a Christian community, sort of like a bit of a parallel society kind of thing that we had going on there. Grew up there until I was 16, really enjoyed it, had a lot of great experiences, still have a lot of friends there, go back and visit every now and again. Then grew up after the age of 16 in Maine, and then I've been around a bit in the US since then. But yeah, music has always been a big part of my life. We in my family, my mom was always involved in music, like at church and stuff. We all, did piano lessons and all that kind of stuff when we were little kids. And it was just a big part of our community, the sort of little micro community that we had there. Music was always a big part of it. One of my uncles was a very prolific gospel church songwriter. And yeah, it was a really big part of any get together we had was just sharing music. A lot of times, original music, from the community. from members of the community. So yeah, like sharing music with people, and also the sort of magic, I guess you could say, of creating music was always something I was around. So that was I always found it inspiring and magical, but it always seemed like something that you could do because I knew people who did it. So when I was in my later teens, I started, writing songs a bit. I was really into, I came up in sort of evangelical church environment, so I was into the kind of contemporary Christian scene. But thankfully, there are a few great bands there. So one band I was really into, I'll shout them out, was this band called Delirious, and they were a big part of my trying to songwrite when I did at the age of about 17. And then through some of these bands and their influences, I got into U2 really was a big one. And then through them, it got into sort of the deeper influences that I've had over the years, Velvet Underground, Joy Division, Sex Pistols, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was in my sort of late teens, and then early 20s, I started to take it a little more seriously as a craft, songwriting, rather than just thinking about like songs I could share with people at church. Became a little more serious about actually, learning how to write songs. And it was around that time in my early 20s that I started working with Kevin, who you're familiar with now. And he played a really big role as a mentor for me in terms of songwriting. It's kind of hard to like describe exactly. It would take a long time, but he was just a really important mentor. Gave me the right sort of frame of reference, and he's just really great at these little like key bits of wisdom. One thing I remember I'll throw in, just because it was so huge for me, and it didn't make all the sense to me at the time that he said it, but has since been like reverberating around and affecting my life and art. But he said, one thing that defines a great piece of art is it gives something a name. And I was like,
yeah.
It's great.
Oh,
and he also was like, if you're serious about writing of any kind, you've got to read Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet. So he got me, he put me on that path too, which was also really important. But yeah, so I lived in Nashville for a little while. And I was in some ways not very productive when I was there, but I also I learned a lot about songwriting from Kevin, and from just, being around different people and trial and error, just like anything else, putting in the hours. And yeah, now I live in Savannah, Georgia. I have a band here, and yeah, I do a lot of songwriting, and we play out as many shows as we can. It's life is busy and people are busy, but we have a good time. We have a great little scene here in Savannah, and yeah, it's great to be a part of it, and kind of, to bring it back full circle, like when I was a kid, I kind of still feel that like when people get together, it's the only reason I leave the house, really, other than like to go to my day job, is for musical like gatherings of some sort. So I would have no social life if it wasn't for music.
I know.
And
exactly how you feel.
yeah, that's I guess me in a nutshell for the purposes of this conversation.
Well, that's actually you managed to pack in a lot of meaning in a few words. It's actually pretty cool. I like the way you did that, community, and trying to get things out there in terms of like getting people to congregate, share ideas, share what it means to be human. Throwing in Kevin there as well, Seraphim, the Orthodox Outcast. He'll also be on the show shortly, very soon.
Awesome,
So
yeah.
I'm happy you threw that in. Yeah, he's fantastic, and that's a great quote. Can you say it again? What did he say again?
Yeah, one thing that defines a good piece of art is that it gives something a name.
That's really powerful, and I could see that that means a lot to you. From the songs I've seen that you've written, and like the article, which we're going to get into right now, it really comes through. It comes across that little piece of information that he seeded in you. You could see that you took it to heart, and it really does show. It really does show. Like more than a few of the songs I've heard of yours, they're not just songs. It's not like what I mean by that. That sounds like really grandiose, but I'm a songwriter myself, obviously, and I really respect someone that takes time to craft something, to actually put meaning into the words, but not just like a regular meaning. Actually, you know what? The clip that you sent me, Leonard Cohen, actually he nails it. So I won't even say it because that just popped in my mind. That Leonard Cohen clip. We're gonna play that in a second. But before we do, you're on the show for a couple of reasons. A, we wanted to do a show a while back before you had written this article, and then you had sent me this article, which I'm going to definitely push you to do something with, and we'll talk about that after the show because it's got to get out there. It's fantastic. It's great. I think you sum up a lot of thoughts and ideas a lot of us have that kind of feel the same as you. Maybe not as many people are as courageous as yourself to put it into words. I know I feel this way, and I've been thinking myself on how to kind of get this message out there. But before I get too deep on what I think this article that we're referring to, so that the audience knows what it's about. Why did you write this article? Like, I know I haven't even really like told anyone what the article is about, but why did you write this article? Even before you tell us what the article is about, let's kind of go in reverse. Why did you write this article? And then flow into what the article is about. But before you do that, when do you want to play that Leonard Cohen clip? I purposely left it that way. I was like, I'm going to ask him, when does he want me to play it? Do you want me to play it now? Do you want me to play it throughout the conversation? When do you think's best?
I think so. I can say a few words about why I wrote the article or essay, and then maybe that'd be a good time to play the Cohen clip, and then we can talk a little bit more about what the article actually is about, I guess, if you want. But I guess my motivation. So, on the one hand, I've been sort of toying with the idea of exploring different kinds of writing aside from songwriting. And I mentioned to you earlier, ironically, like I've been studying for my university degree and doing a lot of writing in that process. And that's kind of prompted me to think about, like, could I do this kind of writing in a more free form, like, way on my own, not just for, to get good grades. And what I've actually found, the real thing is that I realized how important writing an idea is to organizing it and actually fully articulating it. So, and at the same time, it's kind of a lot of things together, because I've also been doing a few more podcasts and this kind of thing. And you begin to realize, like, it's a little bit difficult, actually, even though you have like a lot of thoughts in your head, to just express them. Yep. And so I thought, I've been thinking about this topic a lot, and what I've been seeing a lot that's concerned me is, well, there's the good on the one hand, which is that there's a lot of alternative sources of entertainment, cultural output, whatever you want to call it, and that's a good thing. But one thing I've seen that's concerned me a bit is some of the ones that have become fairly popular have been not so much attempting to, like, bring people together and talk about our common humanity and things like that, but sort of like a flag planting exercise, or cheering on my team, or you could say preaching to the choir, whatever you want to call it, that kind of thing. So I've been thinking a lot about this for quite a while, at least months, if not longer. And in an attempt to sort of organize my thoughts, and partly in preparation to have this conversation with you, I decided to try writing this essay. And as I started writing it and doing a little bit of research, it started flowing, like a lot more. I had written a lot more by the end than I had intended to write at the beginning. And then, as you're aware, I then sent it to a couple different people, and that was really important. I'm glad I did that, because I had a lot of thoughts about, like, what I was uncomfortable with, or what I didn't like, or what I didn't think was going in a good direction. But I needed some help to articulate, or even to figure out maybe like why I felt that way and what was the flip side, like what was the better direction to go in.
Mhm.
So yeah, those are, I think that's kind of an outline, if that makes any sense, of the
Absolutely does.
motivation behind writing the article. And then, yeah, maybe that's a good time to put that Leonard Cohen clip in there, which I think I actually saw that after I wrote the article, but
You did.
it's really, really, yeah, really deftly articulates what I was thinking about.
What I mean by you did is because I know, because you'd sent me the article, then a little while later you sent me the clip, and I was like, we gotta play this. This is a great clip. All right, so I'm gonna hit play. Let's do this. This is good old Leonard.
That naturally come to you, especially in a highly politicized time like we are now. It's something that goes beyond what has been called political correctness. It's a kind of tyranny of a posture, kind of tyranny that exists today of like what the right thing should be. So that those ideas are swarming through the air like locusts, and it's difficult for the writer to determine what he really thinks about things, what he really feels about things. So in my own case, I have to write the verse and then see if it's a slogan or not, and then toss it. But I can't toss it until I've worked on it and seen what it really is. So I find that process of writing the verse and discarding it until I get down to something that doesn't sound like a slogan, that doesn't sound like something that's easy, that surprises me.
Yeah, that's that really sums up a lot there.
So
What's your take on this? Absolutely, so good.
it's just, yeah, that's everything right there. Yeah, to take the time. I mean, there's so much in it, even just like, regardless of anything else, just so much to learn as a songwriter about the process of like self-editing, rewriting, discarding.
Yeah.
Because you have, it's kind of the process of like working through your ego to get to
Yes.
what's honest about what you want to say, but yeah, it's all there. He says in the beginning of the clip, yeah, well, I mean, it was in there, yeah, just to do away with anything that sounds like a slogan. That's what he's talking about.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that's sort of the aim. The direction I'm trying to take with this essay, because I think it doesn't really know like a political side. I think everybody is susceptible to this, but what I've seen, and we've talked a little bit about this privately, that concerns me a lot is recently on the conservative space of conservative, you could call it cultural production. There's this tendency to sort of have it be a wagon circling exercise, and
Yep.
it just sort of contributes to this idea of creating these cultural silos where
Yep.
everybody exists in their own sort of echo chamber, and you just try and make up, enough stuff to keep. It's almost like you want to just keep everybody around you. Yeah, I mean, circling the wagons, like I said, and you don't want people, going and getting other ideas anywhere else. So you just try and, give people enough to consume to keep them where you are. But I had written a note actually earlier today. I was thinking, and this word popped into my head, which I hadn't used in the article, but I thought actually, people are trying to create cultural alternatives, but what they're actually doing is sort of ghettoizing
Yes.
their own, in the case of like conservatives, I think a lot of the output, or I shouldn't say a lot, because I I don't know how much I'm exposed to, but some of what I've seen has been more alienating to anybody who's not of a certain type of opinions than anything else. And
Absolutely.
that's one problem with it, but not the only problem.
Yeah, no, I fully agree, and the silo comparison is really good, and the circling the wagons, because you see that a lot. It's like if you just keep everyone on the hamster wheel, just kind of whether it's like whatever you're into, if you're super woke or you're super conservative or you're really into conspiracy theories, what they want, like whomever wants to socially engineer us or control our attention, which is really what the gadgets we all have are. They're just attention robbers, so that they can constantly get you in an echo chamber saying the same thing over and over again, and everyone's like rooting you on, but no one's actually really doing anything. And at the same time, you're right. If there was someone that was kind of on the fence trying to consider your opinion, your side, you've completely ostracized them by the way that you behave. And then siloing and echo chambering, it actually serves no good. It serves nobody. You're just sitting around rooting for the same team, as you said. You're just picking sides, and it did feel like that over the last couple of years, particularly. Like everyone had to pick a side, and I remember there was a moment where I was even thinking about it myself, and I'm really happy I took a step back to kind of see what let the dust kind of settle a bit. So so your article not only is it powerful on from this perspective, it also kind of goes in deeper and kind of really thinks the whole goes deep into the thinking of whether or not what is protest music. How do we apply protest music? Does protest music really even exist? And all of that. So kind of take us through a lot of that thinking, because you really got a lot of good ideas in there.
Yeah. So I think, well, like I said, the one problem is what we touched on, which is the like deepening division and isolation of one group from another group, which I think serves a purpose that is maybe unintentional by the people who are doing it, but it also doesn't serve the purpose of what artistic expression should be. And so that sort of brings it to the other point, which is like, well, what should we be doing? Is there a better thing to be doing? And it's not so much a question of protest music or not. It's more a question of like, where is it coming from? Yeah. And is it motivated by like trying to make a point, trying to convert people, or like to your point of view in a superficial way, or is it motivated by love and universal humanity? And I think that if there is, and maybe none of this is like things you can draw clear lines between, right? But if there is a clear line you could draw between like a good example and a bad example of what you could call protest music, I think that motivation is where you would draw the line. Like, are we just trying to, preach at somebody or, shout somebody down? It's almost like, this just popped into my head. Maybe tell me what you think of it. It's almost like there are these people. I used to live in Athens, Georgia, which is a great music town. But I recall these people would stand on a one or two street corners on like a Friday night or a Saturday night. It's party town, college town, and they would just preach in a megaphone at people, like. But it was also, by the way, never anything nice. Like, it was not like the social gospel. It was the antisocial gospel, right? Which and I recalled these people, and I think that maybe is a good analogy to some of this kind of stuff, like the example of like the bad example of protest music is like shouting people down with a megaphone. Or is it the other side of it is maybe something like blowing in the wind? I don't know, whatever. I think maybe each person could do this individually. Like, think of a protest song that really resonates with you and examine it. And I think you probably will find that the motivation underlying the song is less trying to make a like political point that is like drawing a line between us and them, and more trying to highlight the what brings us all together. Because ultimately, like, that's actually the only way to quote unquote win an argument, really, is to be able to show the other person like where you have common ground and why they should trust you, listen to you, whatever. So yeah, I think maybe that sums up what I'm trying to get at in the article in so many words.
Do you not find so how do you see what's being put out currently? How do you view that in terms of like because you mentioned a lot of things about the conservative side of things. How do you view now? Like how do you evaluate the content that you're seeing being put out there? How does it fit to what you've just said?
Well, I would say whether it's conservative or not, I would say like pretty much anything that like I don't necessarily want to paint with such a broad brush, but I'm just going to, and people can quibble around the edges if they want to, and that's fine. But in my opinion, from what I have seen, almost anything that like name drops a politician isn't going to be coming from the latter, the higher motivation of love and common humanity. It's not impossible, but that's not what I've seen. And I've seen a lot of people on the right, and it's almost like maybe vengeance is too strong a word, but it's almost like people are discovering like, oh, now we have these tools where we can put out our own stuff. And so, you know, it's just like the pendulum swings hard in the other direction and they just want to go. But it's also like, it's almost like it's not very articulate, because what they're actually reacting against is a lot more subtle, which is why it's a lot more effective in terms of influence. And so they're kind of, you know, and again, I don't even necessarily say there's no place for it, because maybe there is some element of like, you know, there's like the one guy who really like pushes way out there and it's a little bit kooky, you know, like the Alex Jones figure or something, but really then like they make the way for more like nuanced people to come through, you know. And I don't pretend to know everything about what, you know, or much at all really about how these things kind of work, but it seems to me that a lot of what I'm seeing right now from the conservative side is not, I wouldn't expect it to be effective. Like if I was on the other side, which I have been in the past, I must admit, I wouldn't find it persuasive, or I wouldn't be inclined to listen to it despite my feelings about its message. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I think we all, as conservatives, I think we all know what I mean, because that's what we do all the time. If we like music or movies or art of any kind, is we kind of swallow what we think about the opinions of the person and we listen to what they're doing because we like it. It's good. And sometimes you have to kind of sort through the messaging and you know, you do have to be kind of careful what you let become like a mantra inside your head. So sometimes there are those issues, but then other times, you know, one example that comes to me lately is Wilco's, not their most recent album, but the Cruel Country album. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the greatest records ever made. This thing is insanely good. And it was like, when I first listened to it, I liked it, but I was like, okay, yeah, I don't know if it's like, you know, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, but now it's my favorite. It's my most listened to record by far.
Really?
It just grew and grew. Oh yeah. And the songs are just incredible. And there's this one song that is so great. And I can't remember. I think it's called Hints, but the hook is there is no middle when the other side would rather kill than compromise. And then and I remember like when I first heard that song, because of course I know, you know, where it's coming from, whatever, you go like, you kind of like bridle against it because you know who they are, who they probably think they're talking about. But then like I've listened to the song dozens of times since then, and now I just think, what a great line. Like you can take that line out of any song or any poem or anything and just go like, that's a great line. It's a great piece of art, you know? And that's kind of what I'm talking about, and that's what I see is maybe lacking in a lot of cases on the other side, on the conservative side at the moment, But I also think to maybe put a brighter spin on it, I also think like it's sort of a fledgling thing. There hasn't been these opportunities in the past necessarily for these alternative avenues of cultural creation. So it's definitely possible that it's a growing pain. But part of my motivation for writing this essay was to share it around with a few people because I haven't heard anybody talking about this, and I think
and that's
I think maybe it should be.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Go ahead.
No, I do think that people need to talk about this, and going back to like Leonard Cohen's point, and a lot of times if you start writing songs or or whatever from the point of view of like, how can I make a slogan? That is something that I've seen songwriters do, and then they kind of pigeonhole themselves into like an ideology, and then it kind of becomes part of becomes part of their identity, and it kind of sticks to who they are and the type of music they make, and then they start writing from that point of view. Even if it's a hit or a lot of people like it, it lacks something, and I think that that's transcendent. And like the Wilco example you gave, you may not agree with their political view, you may not agree with where they're coming from, but the very fact that that's a songwriter writing a song, you can appreciate it as an artist. And I think that's something that we've lost culturally, because there's a lot of I'm not conservative, I'm not left, I'm kind of like, I've never voted, I'm one of those guys, right? So for me, I feel that at one point, a lot of these left-leaning artists, they were putting out their messages and promoting things, and I liked a lot of, like, I love Billy Bragg, for example. You brought up Wilco, that album that they did with Billy Bragg. You can't get any more socialist than Billy Bragg,
Yeah.
But I'm nowhere near a socialist. But I appreciate the craft. I appreciate the craft and how he positions it. And then to contrast that with something like Rage Against the Machine, when I was really young, I was more into like the intensity of it and like screaming those slogans out. But that kind of didn't really last very long. Like, I think there's a difference there when you Billy Bragg, Wilco. There's a craft there versus just like slogan this, slogan that. Let's go.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of is one of the things I'm seeing from the quote unquote right. Maybe because they feel that they've been beaten down for so long, and they've been ridiculed, and they've been like, people have not been, you know what I mean? Like, so now they finally have a point on some things, and they're doubling down on it, and they're kind of gravitating towards sort of the same tactics that we're criticizing from this quote unquote left. To a degree, I get it. And at first, when it was happening, I was kind of like, okay, yeah, I get it. Get that out of your system. Get it out of your system.
Yeah.
And it just kept going. Like you mentioned, bringing up like a political, a name, whatever. Yeah, there's. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. I just think that the craft of it is kind of lost if that's the approach you're taking. You bring up Bob Dylan, and you actually made me think about Bob, actually, from your article. I've always been a Dylan fan, but there was a moment in my life where I was kind of wasn't sure about him. You know what I mean? Like when he started doing, he gave Times Are Changing to BMO, Bank of Montreal in Canada, as a commercial and all that. Yeah, it left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. You know what I mean? And but you bring up a lot of good points about the 60s counterculture artists, and their lack of appearance in the quote unquote last couple of years, where people should have been speaking out a lot about liberty and justice and this and that, and they kind of either fell to the wayside or flat out went against, they went towards the establishment rather than against the establishment. So yeah, get into some of that stuff, because I think you made some very valid points. I know I said a lot there, but you got me thinking. When you get me thinking, I start jabbering. You know what I mean? Take it as a compliment.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. No, it's good. I I think what you said about like I like that you brought it back to like the difference between some of the other artists we were talking about and an artist or a band like Rage Against the Machine. Yeah, I think that's a good example from the other side, and definitely like this is not to be seen as like a criticism of any side, because this is where it's happening that I'm seeing now. And also, by the way, like I care about it as a person who definitely has sympathy for the cause on the sort of like anti-establishment side. So that's where I'm coming from, just to be completely clear.
Me too.
But sorry, what was the question now? where were we going? I lost my train of thought.
You're talking about the comparison of like Rage Against the Machine versus
Sorry, you asked about the 60s people.
Yeah.
I think like what I kind of like hint at in the article is just that like people are sort of surprised, and I guess understandably so to some degree, that some of these like people who branded themselves as, you know, of the people, you know, the working man. I could think of Springsteen, maybe we drop a name, you know, different people who then over the past 4 or 5 years were just totally like, hey, everybody do what you're told, and down to the point of like being like, you can't come to my show if you haven't done what you're told, kind of thing. And on some level, of course, that's going to be disappointing. But on the other hand, you know, at the time that these people were coming up and they were the big like youth culture thing, you know, it was their dads and granddads who were in power, and their dads' friends, but now it's like their pals that they've, you know, that they used to smoke joints with. So we can't really expect that much from them to be on, like, in general, in terms of like that. It's also like the sort of anti-establishment thing. It's a young man's game, I think. And so, I kind of make that comment in the article of like, I think we just kind of give them a pass and move on about it, right? Like, because, and on the one hand, it's what I said, like, it's kind of a young man's game, being anti-establishment and, you know, speaking truth to power and shaking your fist at the man. And on the other hand, also, you have to bear in mind, like, these people have lived in a very carefully protected bubble for 50 years. So they genuinely don't know, unless they, you know, unless like in the case of like an Eric Clapton or a Van Morrison, like, unless they really make an effort or have something happen to them personally, like it touches them personally, like in the case of Eric Clapton, they're not going to know. It's not so much that they like are going out of their way to talk down to you, but they only know what they're told, you know? So I just, you know, not to like belabor the point, but I just, in my head, like, I wasn't really expecting anything more from Neil Young or I get Springsteen or any of these guys, you know? So I still, you know, like their music, and I, you know, cover some of their songs and I listen to them and stuff, and it's like, whatever. Yeah. So yeah, on that point, I just think, you know, I see a lot. It's just not that something I think is worth spending all that much time talking about. I think it's easily explainable why these people underperformed in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I think I agree to a degree. I think there's also a side that it's a little bit more. How do I put this? So like here now, I guess we're going to switch towards more of a conspiratorial segment of the podcast.
I should say, before you, just to not to interrupt, but like I should say, like, what I just said is like, I'm just granting the accepted narrative of everything. Like, given that, if you actually accept that they were what they said they were, even so, I still wouldn't expect that much. So anyways, now go ahead. No,
I know. And I wasn't going to correct you on it. I was going to kind of like say, like, there's an aspect of that where that's true. Like, so like, okay, so just give me a second here. Let me just try to break this down, because it's one of those moments where you have like 30 thoughts at once and you try to break it down. So while it was all happening, like, I'm obviously doing this podcast, and I'm, you know, and that's a long story in itself. And I've always had the opinions that I have, that I talk about on the show about social engineering, culture creation. That's something that I've been into for a long time. So I was kind of aware of all this stuff as COVID hit, as the whole like last 4 years hit, and all the people were, you know, up in a, you know, let mandate this and that, blah, blah, blah. So I was already kind of well versed in that. So I was watching it from that perspective. But I'm happy and I'm grateful that I got into it so many years ago, because it wasn't fresh to me. So I wasn't really quick to like pull out the gun and start shooting and be like, this guy's doing this and that, which I saw a lot in the beginning. And while it was happening, I was thinking to myself, maybe I should do that. And some people told me I should do that. And I was like, no, I'm going to sit back for a minute. So where I'm going with this is that, to your point, we always think that everything's nefarious, everything's a conspiracy. And that's not to say that there aren't plenty that are true. Absolutely, there are. But there's a lot of people that get caught in the middle that, like you just described, they're not actually fully aware. Like, for example, Clapton, he took it, he did it. You know, it wasn't to his benefit health wise, so therefore that kind of woke him up. But that's a star that's really high on the totem pole. So you would assume he would know the truth, right? But he didn't know the truth. You know what I'm saying? So he wasn't the paid actor. But then there's others who probably are. And it's hard to kind of distinguish both. So I like that you referenced the 60s because we can clearly see that a lot of the 60s was designed. It was completely by design and engineered. That doesn't mean that every artist in the 60s was in on it. A lot of people kind of go into something for good reason, and they have very good intent, and they're ready to do what it takes to stand for what they believe in. And along the way, things happen. You know, you start to become successful. Money kind of draws you towards things. You might have done something stupid at a party. They have that over you. So there is that angle to a lot of this. And I think during the last 4 years, we kind of seen the machine that was designed and created and put into play in the 60s kind of perfected over the years. And then what we're seeing, to go back to some of the things you said earlier in the interview, they started to create silos. You called them silos. I really like that term. I call them like little camps, little echo chambers, and they just stick you in there. And everyone kind of, if you just stay in your little square, you're not really spreading your ideas. No one's really listening to you, and you're not really achieving a goal. You're just all sitting around complaining. And I did see a lot of that, and a lot of these celebrities that went out and attacked or promoted. I think either they were in on it from the position that they knew something, or they got paid to do something. But then there was a lot of guys, to your point, that just kind of didn't know. You know, just they went along with like I know people in my family, they genuinely didn't know, and they thought they were doing right by telling me to go along with the agenda. Now they're not saying that, and that's how you know the true spirit of humanity. To go back to your point about humanizing music yet again, that part of you that knows something's up also knows when to apologize and to say, you know what? I didn't know, dude. I made a mistake. So Clapton's a great example of that. He went along with the, you know, whatever you want to call it. And he decided some way through that, you know, I'm going to admit that I was wrong. This is BS. He didn't have to do that. Van Morrison didn't have to do that. Yeah. So I think that's commendable. That's very, very commendable.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, from people who have, you could argue, you know, I guess you could argue either way. I was going to say people who have a lot to lose, but I guess you could say, I mean, at this point, not really. But I think in terms of reputation, I think both of them did have a lot to lose and lost a lot. And there were actually prior examples of this before this sort of like COVID era. The one that springs to mind is Morrissey, and another is actually John Lydon. Both of them.
Yes.
Both of them, like, I mean, as absurd as it sounds to say, but like people called Morrissey a racist, and some people still do. Like more, like, and it's just such a funny thing. You go like, really, Morrissey's a racist? That's what you're coming out with? But it's true. And John Lydon, you know, got criticized literally for just saying, well, it's a democracy, and we had a referendum, and the people chose Brexit, so you have to do it, which is. Couldn't be a less controversial opinion, right? but you know, so but also, you know, good for both of those guys, and you know, I don't think you can overstate. I don't think I can overstate the influence that was just on me personally to see.
Don't
guys.
Move past Morrissey for a second. Sorry to interrupt you. He also made a comment in 2018 about feminism.
I don't recall specifically, but I absolutely believe it. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to throw that in. Keep going.
No, but just I'm staying on the same point, which is just to say that both of those guys, I know, I would say slightly less about Morrissey because I've read a couple of well, I've read one of Lydon's biographies, and I haven't read a biography of Morrissey, but both of them have made a reputation for themselves all across their career as people unafraid to ruffle the wrong feathers. And particularly in the case of like John Lydon, has like a religious devotion to the truth. And there are, definitely reasons for that, stemming from his childhood, but it's almost beyond religious. It's almost like obsessive compulsive. He cannot tell a lie, which is a beautiful thing, And then also like, not to like over butter his biscuits here, but like the man is a wonderful human being, and everybody, like, that's come to light more so in the last couple of years than it ever has before in his life. But yeah, to just see those two guys specifically, and there are other people too, but like to have that integrity to just be like, listen, I have been saying stuff that people don't like for my entire career, and I'm not going to stop now just because whatever. And yeah, that had a big influence on me in that. What I sort of, the tidbit that I took away from that is like, don't start lying to get somewhere. Like, just let that be your brand the whole way through. Like, this is what I think, and I'm going to be honest about it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in every song I write or every like whatever interview I do or whatever. But like, if you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you what I think, because if your brand is something other than that, or your public image is something other than who you really are, we've seen it in the past, over the past decade, with Me Too or with whatever, this and that. Like, it's gonna come crashing down around you at some point, and the only people who have any chance of like having staying power in this day and age where like we all live on display all the time, more so than ever before, are people who figure out early on, like, I'm not gonna lie just to fit in with this group or that group or the other group. And then the other like bonus of that is, and maybe like you have to have maybe a little bit of age to get your head around this, but like ultimately those things about you that you feel really self-conscious, those opinions that you're like afraid of when you're younger because they make you different or not fit in, like that's actually what makes you interesting and worthwhile as a creative anyways. So it's a like figuring that out is a real bonus, which is, to bring it back to full circle to the topic of conversation, that's kind of where my motivation is coming from, like with writing this article and having this conversation, is like, I want to hear from people who don't have the like establishment, cathedral, mainstream, whatever you want to call it, narrative, because it's interesting. And I want to hear from them, but I want to hear from them on a level of like on a real artistic level. Like, I want to hear, their experiences in life, because they're more honest, like, because I know they're more honest, so I can get more out of what they have to say about love, about, failure and redemption, about, anything, relationships, tragedy, joy. I can learn more from what they have to say because they're honest, but it takes, so I want to see them not get pigeonholed into, talking about politics or talking about, like talking about culture, because that's another thing I try to highlight a little bit in the article, is like, if what you're talking about in your art is culture as it exists and politics, you're kind of downstream of where you should be as an artist. You should be upstream of all that as much as possible. Like you can, and it's almost like what Leonard Cohen was saying in that clip. Like, you can start with something in your head that's very filtered through culture, through politics, because that's what's, circulating around and getting pumped into our faces all the time. But like, you have to get through that. You have to filter that out and just get to what you really are, feeling. Like, you can have an experience of being ostracized for your opinions, or you're taking a stand on something, and like that's, I want to hear that story, but I want to hear it the most human version of it. I don't want it to be filtered through all of this other stuff, like, because this happened to me, I fit in with these people now, or this people. Does that make sense?
100%. As a songwriter, 100% makes sense, because also coming from a songwriter, like us songwriters, it's a strange position to be in, because when you're looking at life, not just culture, not just politics, just life, and just how you put that, I really like that, because you could be looking at politics, you could be looking at, you know, something like the cultural war that's going on or whatever, and you can choose to see it without any filters on. Like, you know, when you take filters and you put them in front of a light, it changes the light, it changes that, and it only, like, it reduces the amount of light that goes through it, so therefore it changes the color and all that stuff. It's similar with when you write a song. If you let those core beliefs that change, because, like, I'm a lot older now as a songwriter than obviously I was. That's sounds stupid, but you know what I mean? As I've gotten older, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm really tired. As I've gotten older, and I look back at some of the songs I've written, and I've been doing that a lot lately, especially that I've kind of changed the way I see life. A lot of my belief systems have changed. They've kind of actually gone full circle back to when I was a child, in terms of how I view God, life, and all that stuff. And I'm looking at a lot of the songs I wrote at different stages in my life, and I'm compiling them. I've taken 4 years away from the band I had, and the kind of style of writing that I was doing, the people that I had around me, and all that stuff. So I've taken 4 years away. As I've done that, I've changed, obviously, but looking at the music I've written, I see the lenses I had in some cases, not in terms of ideology, and I'm really happy I didn't do that, but in terms of the way I perceived it. So, like, to your point, you could be looking at politics, and you can write it from the point of view of you, of how you feel about it, how it made you feel. Did it make you feel upset, happy, this and that, rather than just like, I have this belief. Look at my belief. Here's my belief. It's a totally different way of one is written from the perspective of having a purpose to slogan. The other one is from my experience, and how I view it from my point of view. Like, it brings the humanity back into the conversation. So it totally makes sense what you said.
And it allows people to understand each other. That's why I think that is why it's worthwhile, because like to go back even to the Wilco example, like, because the song, and not just that song, but many songs by this band and many other bands, like, if they're crafted in a personal, like they're crafted from a personal perspective.
Yep.
Even if I might disagree with the ideological filter that it's coming through, if it's a well-crafted piece of art, I can then gain some level of understanding of this specific person, and by extension, perhaps other people who have this point of view. And even if you vehemently disagree, that's only a good thing, right?
Yes.
Like if what you want to do is reach people in a more effective way, as whether it's, to be a better friend to people, or to be better at communicating across these sort of cultural barriers that exist, or whatever it is. Like, if having a better understanding of people, specifically people who don't think the same things you do, is only good. So I want to see that, that effect coming from, the other side, because I think not only am I not seeing very much of that, instead what I'm seeing is the opposite. It's almost like we don't want you to relate to us, or we don't want anything to do with you. It's almost like where the analogy, on the actual literal political landscape, is people who are, these secessionist people, new Civil War type people, or which is like, I understand where that's coming from, but there's also an element of surrender in it, in a bad way, if that makes sense. Maybe that's not the right word, but it's like, I think, yeah, it might happen, and yeah, human civilization could continue if the United States ceased to be the United States, but I don't think we start aiming for that. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. That's not what I want to get into, but I think it's just like an analogy of like, we don't want to try to find common ground anymore. We want to dig in and we want to start throwing grenades. That's kind of the attitude I see.
That's actually well put. And I started to notice like a huge, I mean, a lot of people have made reference to this, but I remember I worked for one of the wokest companies you could ever, and countries I lived in. Yeah, I worked for one of the wokest companies yeah, that's right. One of the wokest companies you could ever work for was Lush. You can't get any more woke than them. I started there in 2014, and I remember sitting across the table with many people that we didn't agree on many things. Like, I was not super woke, and they didn't agree with a lot of my point of views, but we would make fun of each other. We would joke around. It was totally cool. Mm-hmm. And then in 2016, when Trump got elected, the whole derangement syndrome and all that, I started to see it like firsthand, because the rest of Canada wasn't super woke. So I remember even telling my friends, yo, the world is going in this direction. They're like, get out of here. And they're like, it's just where you work. But I remember clearly a divide. Around 2017 is when I really noticed it. 16, he got into power, where all of a sudden that conversation we used to have wasn't a conversation anymore. It was an argument.
Yeah.
Like we couldn't like, people would ask me like questions like, well, why do you believe this? And we would go back and forth, and maybe they didn't agree, and it kind of got a bit heated, but we were still friends. Yeah. After around 2017, there was like, that wasn't the case. And then by the time 2020 hit, I started to see, as we all experienced, like massive divide with whether it was in families or in bands or this and that. Because like in Toronto, the entire music scene, like we had an amazing music scene there, like incredible. I can't believe how much I didn't take it. I took it for granted. It was a wonderful music scene, and the entire scene all went the left way. They were all about mandates and this and that. In fact, I'm actually having the record label, the guy who I was on a record label for a while, and he's going to be on the show, because he and I are like probably the only two in the whole music scene that I know of that were like, hell no, we're not doing this. You know what I'm saying? And the reason why I bring it up is the divide is real. And I think you make a lot of good points, that the way you approach songwriting, it either doubles down on that, and it does exactly what you just said, where a lot of the people that are on the right are kind of doing exactly what people on the left used to do. That's why I brought up the example of like 2016 and all the things that we were kind of like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I see a lot of people on the right doing that very thing. The same people that were calling for, freedom and all this stuff are now cancel culturing people like the last little while. Like, many examples, you know what I'm talking about. But it's not just one incident, it's many incidents. And I think that that's unfortunately being translated into the music that we hear coming out from these sides, whether they're upset or angry and they're trying to get back, or they're just sloganeering, or they're not even considering creating the conversation that you're referring to, where you might hear an artist where you don't agree, and then they might say a few things in a poetic way. You still may not agree, but you can appreciate their experience, their life experience. You brought up how someone's upbringing, like your upbringing, how when you grew up around these church communities, that music was part of how you guys gathered, how you said it yourself, you wouldn't get out of the house if it wasn't for music. Yeah. Right. And then music has this powerful effect on us. And I think we forget that sometimes when we get angry and we're trying to prove a point. Yeah. And it's sad. It's kind of sad that that's happening, because a lot of artists I like are doing what you're describing and what you described in the article. And it's kind of sad to see. Although I'm finding a lot of other artists that are not doing that. And I think the common denominator there is they're trying to bring love into the circle, even if it doesn't seem that way, because you brought that up, and I think that's a good point. And love sometimes is harsh, and the truth is harsh, right? And sometimes a good father will just tell you how it is. You know what I'm saying? He'll look you straight in the eye, and I think that's something that's missing around in music. We don't have enough of that, I think. So I rambled there, but
no, I think you're right. I think that on the like interpersonal level, especially. But I think one reason we don't see it very much is because instead of we've had this period, and I think you're correct, absolutely. It begins in about, I mean, maybe it begins a long time ago, but it became really noticeable in the 2016, 2017. And yeah, I also noticed it, and it's what sort of started me on my journey of like waking up to it and realizing, that it wasn't just as simple as, because, I grew up very, had a very conservative upbringing. So in my early 20s, I was sort of, exploring other points of view. And, this included what was at the time the very like nascent version of what is now like full blown woke. But I was sort of sympathetic as a sort of open-minded person exploring different ideas coming out of a very conservative background. But then that time period of 2016, 17, when, like you said, people on the left began to do the sort of digging in and throwing grenades thing. And it was like, it was very like, you should like disassociate from people who have this point of view. But it was like, well, I'm not going to do that. Like I know it's just, I was too invested in my family, my people, the church community that I had at the time, it's like, I'm not going to alienate myself from people that I love and that I know love me just because of a difference of opinion.
Yep.
But, part of that was not being so plugged into like mainstream sources who are telling you all this stuff. And so if you just believe all that, then you have to believe like, oh, these are the worst people, not to beat a dead horse on that, but it began then. And so the division between like, people who might be in the scene, the local scene, let's say, who had different opinions, like you described, where you were kind of across the table, joshing with each other about your wacky ideas. And it became just super cold and like, off limits to discuss. And I think that's one reason we don't see what you said, at the end, like the being able to like pull somebody aside and admonish them or like have a kind of difficult conversation, because that's been now 10 years almost of not building those relationships with people who think differently from us. So if I can bring in maybe a more like bright note, I think that some of that is coming back, because if nothing else, I think people are just getting bored with not having anybody to talk to that doesn't think like them, or having to walk on eggshells, or whatever the case may be. I do think we are seeing some cracks in that armor, and I had written a song recently that I played when I was on Joseph Arthur's show the last time, that I had started writing when he and I were having a similar conversation about this. And I was saying like, it looks like, the walls are slowly coming down. So he was like, yeah, brick by brick. So I wrote this song, Brick by Brick. But anyways, it was based on that thing. Like, I think we are sort of starting to see some inroads being made here and there. And it's just people, I think, opening up to, we're also starved for like real connection with each other. And if you find people who are willing to like be open with you and honest and like, have a friendship with you, then it takes a real sort of like demented outlook to be like, no, I don't want to have, I think it's just like, as much as people might want to, it's almost surprising sometimes to see the like disparate types of people who will just connect randomly just by like, being friends, like just being willing to like, it's okay to disagree with somebody. And then like, just, that's it. You just disagree. Okay.
Absolutely.
Like,
it used to be normal. That used to be like normal way to live for thousands of years.
Yeah. No, it's like the spice of life in a way to have those relationships.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, absolutely. And it also challenges your ideas. You don't know if like I know a lot of things I believe now I didn't believe before, and I got there through conversation, debates, considering the other side. And I think you're 100% right that things are changing, and it's those people that really are doubling down now on either side of the fence that are looking really ridiculous. And like I've had quite a few people reach out to me in the last. It started about a year ago, but now it's escalating. Like every week, there's someone who's reaching out, like, "Hey, man, I thought you were nuts. Couple, like, but maybe you're not so nuts." And then, I hope you don't hate me. And I'm like, why would I hate you? You know what I mean? Like,
This is the Austin Powers quote. I used to think you were crazy.
you know what? A lot of us are getting that now. But one of them was one of my former bandmates. Saw a clip that I put out. I was having a conversation with a friend, and he reached out through YouTube. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but it's public. It's on YouTube, and he's kind of like, I miss having like conversations with you, like having like these debates, because we would always have healthy debates. And he was like, I hope you feel the same way. I'm like, why wouldn't I? Of course. So yeah, we got on the phone, we talked. Like we didn't,
awesome.
There's no bad blood. Sorry.
I said that's awesome. I'd love to hear that.
Oh, yeah. So it's stuff like that. I think you're 100% right. People are tired. I know I'm tired. Like that's why I'm not talking about like people are asking me, why am I not putting out more stuff about social engineering and all that? 'Cause I'm tired of it. Like I didn't get into the subject originally to talk about it. Like there's a lot of people out there that do, and that's what they're all about. And I get it. I've been at that for a while, and I got into that subject matter just more because of my interest in consciousness. And at the time, that's what I called it. And I was always questioning what's real. And part of it was understanding the fabric of society. And that's going to take you down the conspiratorial path. And I'm tired of it. I'm really tired of it. The last couple of years, I had to talk about it a little bit extra because I had to explain some things to some people, and I had to learn things myself, right? I don't know all that. And I have to say, like, we brought up life. We brought up God, sort of, in some ways. We brought up songwriting and humanity and love. And I think those are all intertwined and connected. And for me, like going back in that direction and giving God an identity rather than what I used to believe changed a lot of things for me. Like I always wanted to connect with people, always, but I think the last couple of years, sorry for going off on a tangent, but I think it's important. And I think it's what I got out of your article. What I got out of your article at the seed of it. And it wasn't even just a lot of the examples you gave. What I got out of it was this, that like, of course I'm putting my own spin on it. We're all kind of human, not kind of, we are human. And part of being human is like sharing this experience, regardless of whether you agree or you disagree with my experience or your experience. I want to hear your story. I want to hear your travels. I want to hear what happened, what's going on. And we've seemed to have lost that for whatever reason, whether it was engineered or whatever people have done to our society. But the human spirit still knows that on some level, deep down inside. Like you can't confuse that part of you that knows that. And applying God to it and giving like an identity. I know you didn't put that in there, but that's kind of how I saw it. It's like you're talking about identity. You're talking about love, a form of forgiveness. You're making reference to a form of forgiveness. And I think that's something that we can appreciate. And the last 4 years, it's clear that something bad is out there, whatever name you want to give it. So therefore, there must be something good. And that's kind of bringing people to the point where they're tired. They don't want to fight with their families anymore. They don't want to fight with their friends. They want to sit across a bar table on two different bar stools, have that argument, and at the end, hug each other and walk away. And to me, what I got out of your article is that's lacking and missing in music and in the arts that we see around us. And I think that it's these conversations are important, both the ones we're having, but also if there was someone in this conversation that disagreed with us, the ability to have that conversation without screaming at each other is where we need to get to, I think. So that was a long rant.
That was good. Yeah,
my apologies.
You're right on. Yeah, I like that about. I've been saying that, like, you can, like, you say you don't believe in God, maybe, but at some point in life you'll learn that the devil's real. So then what?
Yeah. Yeah, it reminded me of one of my favorite lyrics. I don't remember the songwriter, but Blood, Sweat, and Tears, the old 60s band, Canadian. There's that line. It says, I swear there ain't no heaven, but I pray there ain't no hell.
Yeah.
And that has stuck with me since almost since I was I would say since birth, because my dad would listen to the oldie station you know the band I'm talking about, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Like what goes
Yeah.
up must come down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that one song, that's not the song. I can't remember the name of the song, but it's great. It's a great song. It's one of my favorites, and that line stuck with me throughout life. Like I swear there ain't no heaven, but I pray there ain't no hell. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people live in that space. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
I think so.
they do. Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's one other line, since I'm talking about lines, that has always stuck with me through life, is it Dave Matthews line. I don't even remember the name of the song, but I remember the line. It was progress took away what forever took to find.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I'm gonna look up what song is that? But
That's funny. That's a good line. I'll have to eat my words on Dave Matthews because that's a good line.
Okay, here. Okay, I'm gonna get into Dave. I'm not a massive Dave, because when you're a Dave Matthews fan, you're like a freak Dave Matthews fan. And not all of his albums are good, but I highly recommend. It's the album Busted Stuff. I highly recommend Busted Stuff and Big Eyed Fish.
Yeah.
I there's a couple of his albums that are brilliant, but I can't say I'm a Dave Matthews fan. But that album,
no, I don't have. I just have a running joke with somebody I work with about being a Dave Matthews hater. I'm not really, but.
Oh, I see. Okay, I thought you were gonna, yeah.
But I'm not I'm not a fan either. So.
No, I totally get it. And you know what the worst part about Dave Matthews is his fans.
Yeah, probably.
Them, Grateful Dead, Fish. Oh man, any of those. I can't take it.
Yeah.
All right. Give me some artists. So you mentioned some good ones. You mentioned Velvet Underground. You mentioned Morrissey, of course. A big fan of Morrissey.
Yeah,
Who else we got?
Oh man, so many. I'm a big fan of Dinosaur Jr.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to think of what I listen to so much. I'm a big fan of. It's kind of funny because I didn't actually get into them until almost like kind of recently, but I'm such a big fan of the Tragically Hip now and Gord Downey's songwriting. Like there's this song on Now for Plan A. I think it's the first song on the album called At Transformation, and the hook line of that song is so good. Like the lyric is let me get it right. The lyric is, "Oh, what a glittering chance at transformation. This is my dream of being." That's it. That's like, wow. You've just said everything, Gord.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can definitely rest in peace after having written that one. Absolutely. Anyways, there's a lot like that. And then Gord has another song called The Moment, which came out recently, that Gord and what's the guy's name? Bob Rock?
The producer?
Yeah.
Bob Rock.
So they put those
the guy that did Metallica and the
yeah. So recently there's some Gord stuff has come out that he did with Bob Rock, but there's a song called The Moment, which is also really good. They say you got to live in the moment. What they don't say is the moment is a wild place. It's a great one. Oh, he's got so many great lines like that, Gord. But
that's good.
Yeah. Who else? I mean, big fan of Joseph Arthur. I know we've talked about him a little bit, and now I get to say that we're kind of pals. But I've been a big fan of him for a long time, so that's cool.
I'm gonna reach out to him next. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Who else? There's so many. I'm like, I have thousands of artists that I really love, and then you go, who do you like? And I'm like, Dude,
I did it to you. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anybody that I like am not remembering right now that I'll seriously regret not mentioning, and I'm sure there is, but
for sure, because that question is the worst. I hate that when people ask me that question.
It's hard. You should always have like 3, but I already gave you those 3 at the beginning, the ones that make me sound the coolest, but there's more too. I hate to say it because it's such a dad rock thing, but I really am into Wilco. I think the songwriting is just absolutely. As a songwriter, I think Tweedy, he just gets better and better and better, and it's almost like stunning sometimes the songs that he comes out with lyric wise, which that's another thing. Some people just don't care about lyrics at all, and that's fine, but lyrics are really what turned me on. So that's a lot of times which
sorry, if anyone thinks that's fine, it's not fine. Lyrics are super important. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of times what will turn me on about a band. But I also am a big fan of Metric, to shout out another Canadian band, and also Wolf Alice. I don't know if you know that band. They're
No.
a UK band. They are super great. And Churches is a great band as well that I like. It's a little bit like off the beaten path for me, being a little bit more like electronic, but really good. But yeah, Wolf Alice, their most recent album. All their stuff is just really, really great. But I really like their most recent album, which I forget the name of. Summer, maybe. Anyways, it's great. But
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's one thing. In the last little while, I was always hunting for new artists, or like, you know, even just new to me. They don't have to be particularly new, and it's been hard lately. But then I did find this. You know who Ren is? His name's Ren. He did a. He's been around for a while.
Vaguely familiar, but I don't recall. No.
If you're on YouTube, I'm sure one of his videos has popped up. I kind of saw some of his videos before pre-COVID, and then around 2020, 2021, he did this one song, Hi Ren, I think it's called. And he's like in a wheelchair, and he's like playing with like flamenco guitar. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, my brother sent me this a while ago. Yeah, great.
That kid is incredible. First of all, that's the kind of guitar I love. That's what I like. I left that. I still cry to this day. My favorite guitar I left in Canada because it was a Mexican guitar, and nobody wants a Mexican guitar like outside of here. But I love that guitar, so I figured, why bring it to Mexico? You know what I mean? Like, they'll be everywhere, and I couldn't find it. So recently, I converted my my other blue guitar into a nylon string because I just love nylon strings. But anyways, going back to Ren. That guy is incredible. I'm going to send you stuff after we get off. It'll blow your mind. Like, this kid is great videos, great songwriting, both instrumentally and lyrically impressive. I love songwriters that write stories.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
that was the one you're talking about, the wheelchair one that my brother sent me. It was like this incredible like story that weaved through. It was really good. Yeah,
it's really, and within the song, he's making fun of himself too. It's like, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So anyone that's not into lyrics, oh man, just don't ever watch my stuff. Get out. The lyrics are super important. You know what I mean? Like, some people say like guys don't pay attention to lyrics. I don't find that necessarily to be true, but lyrics are crucial. Yeah. Like, especially if you're like a songwriter. Sorry.
Yeah, I think I agree completely. And I think one I talked with a few different people about this, but I think the Rolling Stones, to mention other bands that I really like, underrated lyrics with Rolling Stones, I would say, because they were not known for lyrics, but they I think they're underrated because they're great songs and they're simple in their like of the form, but they're not only like great songs lyrically that make sense, but the words all sound right. Like, just the sounds of the actual like vowel sounds, consonants are in the right place. And then, and like, if you've read some of like Keith Richards' book or something, like, that was all really thought out. It's not by accident. They kind of knew what they were doing. I really have probably, that's one of a few big influences on me, is like being into the Rolling Stones music, and then having read like, well, Mick paid a lot of attention to like getting the vowel sound that sounded right with that chord or that beat or whatever and stuff. So I think, lyrics are really important, and it's hard work to write lyrics that that say what you want to say and also sound how you want them to sound at the same time. So, but it's like one of my favorite things to do, is just play with that.
Yeah, that's a good point about the sounding, because that has a lot to do with it. Like, sometimes people will be like, "Oh, you don't pronounce this clearly." I'm like, "Yeah, it's just it's got to be on beat. It's got to be proper." Yeah. That's so true. And I'm bringing up the Rolling Stones actually before, for anyone that's watching this and they're like, "Oh, you know, all of the conspiratorial stuff." Like, yeah, dude, I know about the Rolling Stones and all these bands that we've mentioned, but that's an important thing to bring up real quick, is that even though even though a lot of these bands may have been manipulated or whatever, or just not, a lot of the craftsmanship is there. And I do purposely separate that. Like, I'm a huge Frank Zappa fan, and you can't be Frank Zappa fan and like not know his conspiratorial background. But that doesn't mean, you know what I mean? So like, we kind of talked about that off air before, about like a lot of these guys probably did figure out that they were being used, and then kind of tried to like slap back. But anyways, to go back to the Stones, which is why I brought it up, I was always more of a Stones fan than a Beatles fan. Like I own a lot of the Beatles catalog. Again, I know John Coleman and Tavistock, blah blah blah. But because I know someone's gonna be sending me that, they're like, "Dude, you're talking about the Beatles." Yeah, I know. But back to the Stones. There's a documentary. I don't remember what it's called. I watched it once. And I meant to watch it twice. It was Keith Richards and Tom Waits talking about like music and this and that, because Keith Richards is like huge Tom Waits fan, and like Tom Waits to me is like the best. And that's the big thing with Tom Waits is like you got that percussion, that way that you pronounce it. It actually matters more than the actual way he's. But then when you sit back and you read a Tom Waits song, you're like, that guy wrote this song. Like, have you ever heard Jersey Girl, the Bruce Springsteen version?
I don't know if I have or not.
Try next, like go listen to his version, and Tom Waits wrote the song, and then compare the two. It's hilarious. And like Rod Stewart did I forgot the Downtown Train. You know that song Downtown Train by that's a Tom Waits song. If you go hear the original,
I don't know the Rod Stewart version. I only know the Tom Waits version. I'm actually I think I'm supposed to be doing a cover of it. Maybe actually, I need to figure that out.
What do you mean supposed to be? Like someone's telling you to do it?
No, a friend of mine, like kind of like somebody made like a list of covers. It's a long story, but anyways, and so I picked a few that I wanted to learn from there. A friend of mine from like this list of songs that he was like, I'd love to hear you do these. Anyways, it's a long story,
awesome.
but I think that was one that was on there, and I love Tom Waits and I love that song. And it's funny because I had started learning it probably like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. At some point I had been like, oh, I love this song, I want to learn it. And then I just got distracted by other things, but yeah, great song. Love Tom Waits.
Yeah, Tom's the man. Tom's the man.
I love the piano has been drinking. I used to fall asleep to that song because it's so like soothing and just funny and weird. I love that song though.
Yeah, Tom can be super weird, especially like his middle. Well, even now, like the early years, he was a little bit more beatnecky, that kind of thing. But then later on, he gets down the rabbit hole of the Captain Beefheart years.
Yeah,
like, I love that trilogy.
I was gonna say like when you were mentioning like that people are gonna say like, oh, these people, you know, all the conspiracy people, which is like first of all, yes, fine, I know, but also I always think about it as like if you were whoever that wanted to, you know, co-opt a cultural movement or you would co-opt the best, surely. Like you want to be. So like I don't see it as like an issue. To me, it doesn't get in the way of my enjoyment of the craft work that these people accomplish. Because in my opinion, like, well, they're still obviously going to be the best. Like, you know, whoever it is, if it's CIA or whoever it is, like, is not knocking on the door of some less than mediocre dude in his bedroom and being like, we'd like you. You know, it's always people. You know, it's always the cream that they want to get. You know, and whatever influence in a certain direction or whatever they want to do to fulfill their purposes. But that's how I justify enjoying all of this stuff, despite what may or may not be true about it.
Well, it goes back to like some of the things we were talking about, like sitting there and disagreeing with someone. It kind of fits in that category for me, like within reason, of course. There's some stuff I'm like, come on, this is like a little bit too overt, but just knowing about that and knowing that it's out there and being aware of it. I'm not saying it erases it. I mean, it's good to be aware that this is happening, but a great musician is a great musician. And more importantly, I think, is oftentimes someone goes into something with negative intent, or it becomes negative intent, and then it comes out of it. Like we talked about on the phone about JFK. We gave the JFK example. I think Zappa is in that camp. Like, you know, JFK at first, you know, wasn't, didn't have the right intents. And then eventually he was like, this is bullshit. And then he died for standing up for what he believed in. I personally think that's what Frank Zappa, he fits in that category, and a couple of other artists, and some of the other ones that don't. I have hard time with some artists that were a little bit too overt and too in your face. I do have a little bit of, it's hard to listen to Springsteen sometimes now. I was a big Springsteen fan, you know, and like the Obama years kind of already soured things for me a little bit, especially because like Springsteen. So like you have Born in the USA, he didn't want Ronald Reagan to use it because it was an anti-American song. It wasn't a pro-American song. So he makes this big stink about that, right? And then 2 minutes later, the Obama stuff, and then all of a sudden, COVID stuff, and I'm like, come on, dude, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's you know what I'm saying? It's a little bit. It's not the same as Bob Dylan. That I got over pretty quickly. Like, okay, times are changing. Great songwriter, amazing songwriter, one of the best, if not like the best. And then, okay, he's selling his song to BMO. All right, whatever. That's not the same thing as Go Get the Jab. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not the same thing to me at all.
I saw Dylan just in November.
Oh yeah,
because I'd never had, and I happened to be in New York, and he played a show in Brooklyn, and I went, and it was awesome, dude. I mean, it was like different than I expected because he didn't play guitar at all. He played piano the whole time and did mostly new stuff, and you know, like he's known for doing just unfamiliar versions of his classics, but it was great, man. I was like kind of blown away actually by how good the singing was, of all things. Like I thought, wow, he really, like, you know, he can still do it. And from what I hear, you never know what you're going to get when you show up to a Bob Dylan show, but the one I went to was great. And I thought the songwriting on his most recent album, with Rough and Rowdy Ways, I think it's called, I thought it was amazing. Like he's got the Murder Most Foul about the JFK assassination. I thought it was some of his best in years. I really thought it was great. Yeah.
Maybe I'll check that out. Yeah. So, good songwriters that age well are great. Like, you know, obviously Johnny Cash and Joe Strummer, those types. And, you're not the first person that said about Dylan recently. Cause when I was at, Sony BMG, when I worked at the record label, it's a long time ago, that was like a bad period for Dylan. And I remember, clearly, everyone at the record label, no one really wanted to go see him. And I remember it being kind of sad where people were like, who wants my Dylan tickets? And there was no takers. There was a bit of that. And I was like, why? Like, whatever. And they're like, why don't you go? And I don't remember what my reason was, but it wasn't because I didn't want to see Dylan. Yeah. And I asked, well, why don't you want to go see Dylan? And they would say, well, every time I go see him, it's a different show. He sometimes he gets cranky and he he like tells the audience stuff. And I was like, okay, whatever. But
sounds
recently,
great.
Yeah, actually it does. Exactly. It's like, that's pretty punk rock to me. But recently, a few people have said the same thing that you said, that his newest album, it's kind of like inspired again. He's got some inspiration back.
I thought it was great. There's the Kennedy one, and there's one called Cross the Rubicon, which there's also, like, all of them are great, but those two are like super standouts for me. Yeah, great.
Awesome. Cross the Rubicon. Cool.
Yeah.
Any brand new stuff that you've encountered that was impressive, like new artists? Like, not to put you on the spot again, although I like putting you on the spot. It's funny watching you twitch.
I don't know about like new. That's a good question. I mean, I got friends who have new stuff coming out that I'm excited about. Yeah, my friend Philip has a band in town. His band is called Missing Parts, but they've got a song coming out next week, I think. And
Missing Parts, good name.
Great songwriter. Song's called Stars. It's great. It's a great song. I've heard it probably 1,000 times over the past 4 years. It's great. Love singing along to it. But it's good. I love that. Yeah, like we have a great little scene here of a lot of super talented people. So he's the only one I can think of that has stuff coming out real soon. But yeah, I don't think, like, there's new records and stuff out that I'm like looking forward to, like the Libertines record and the new Cage the Elephant record. I'm actually really intrigued about, because there's seems like maybe an interesting story going on there with the lead singer. But yeah, I and I've been a fan of that band for a while. But yeah, looking forward to that.
Well, what about yourself? And you got any stuff coming up?
I don't have anything like coming out. I have tons of new stuff, and as for everybody, it's just the logistics of getting in the studio and recording. So I've got tons of new stuff that I'm really like excited to put out, but I don't really have a timeline yet of when I'll be able to actually get anything done. Hopefully in the summer I'll have at least a single. I'll be able to record at least a single, or maybe single with a B-side or something like that. But yeah, I have a lot of new songs, and I just have a few things like having a baby and moving into a new house to get out of the way, and then we'll
Right.
we'll hopefully be on to trying to put out some new music later in the year. Yeah, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the new baby and the house.
Yeah,
That's
thank
pretty
you.
awesome. That's pretty awesome. Well, if you want to tell anyone like where they can find your material, if you want to plug anything, what are your plans for this article, all that stuff.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram and X now. I almost said Twitter, my bad. At tthompsonmusic. I'm also on Facebook, Tim Thompson. And I don't know what I'm going to do with this article yet. I think I do want to share it so people can read it, but I'm just not. I've never put out anything like in writing form before. I don't have like a Substack or anything like that. So maybe I should have, or I don't know. But if you follow me on Instagram, really Instagram, Twitter, I'm kind of more obnoxious, and you might say funny or you might say obnoxious, but most of my substantial content is on Instagram. So if you follow me on Instagram, then I'll keep everybody informed on anything I have coming up in terms of shows or music coming out or essays or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
at
for the record, I
tthompsonmusic.
do think you're funny. Sorry.
Oh, thanks.
I'm gonna definitely include that in the thing. I do think you're funny. You actually make me laugh often. I do send you like a message like, dude, I've laughed out loud. It's spicy sometimes, but it's got like this nice guy spice to it. I don't know how to put it. It's like
Oh, good. I like it. I like that. I'll take
I
it.
like it. It's good. All right, brother. I'm gonna make sure to include everything in the show notes and all that business, and definitely gonna get this out there soon.
Right on, man. This was fun. I appreciate it, and I've enjoyed following you and your conversations, and look forward to what you got going on in the future, man. It's fun.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks. Well, we'll definitely be doing this again, so don't worry. We'll have you back.
Right on. Sounds good.
All right, brother. Let me just hit the exit here. I'm so tired. I could feel it.